Ooh. I don't think I'd be overstepping when I say that PS1 era Squaresoft was the gods of renders. Granted, Rare was on some tough competition with their legion of cursed donks, and the more I say about crash renders, the better. Why is he so anemic looking? But I ain't talking backgrounds, though those defo also banked profusely. I'm more so referring to promo or key art used for presentations, FMV, ads, reviews, and guides. Cool Final Fantasy VIII trains, those rather otherworldly looking boats, or just some dope character compositions made for no other reason than that they could. And even when weird looking, they always had tons of style and personality. Check these skunk Moogles from PS1 FF5 for instance, or the adorable Moogle from Chocobo Racing, or all of the loads and loads of stylish Parasite Eve renders, Cloud on Bike, Bushido Blade Face, FF Tic Tacs and Tobal box art, Ergei's poster. Even dipping out their old-timey pixel games with salacious FMV come PS1 ports. They made one's guy look hot as hell and made two's cast look like a dejected pop group, and whipping up some sexy CG for 5 and 6. Not even going Nomura or Anime Pretty, but actually leaning into Amano's original concept arts, using the 90s computer graphics sleekness to make for some of the porcelain-skinnedest princesses this side of the sophistic future. I love this render of Golov. Theater Salus looking straight gorgeous, Biggs and Wedge strapped up and down, and Kefka is downright horrific. High-key, I'd love to see a mainline Final Fantasy look like this. I know Amano is ancient now and probably pretty content with doing a logo or two every year, but man, modern day graphics could do those dangles and hairstyles some proper justice, I'll just say that. Though I suppose that does raise the point. None of these games of this time ever looked at all like these CG renders while playing, backgrounds aside. It wouldn't be until about 13 to where I'd say that they managed that. But what if I told you that there was one game, which name is in the title of this video, that did exactly that all the way back in 1999? So, when you think about it, a game like Need for Speed Underground 2 is kinda like a RPG. It has a town, upgradable stats, equipment, a story, side quests, battles by way of races. It would not be a stretch to dub this a CarPG, as one could with many racers currently too. It's not just racing, it's like a whole ass adventure. However, these types of CarPGs are very much from the car side of things. These are racing games adopting RPG shit, and not RPG shits adopting bits of racing shits. And there ain't many games I can think of that do. Some of the Koro Q titles maybe, though even those are very much car games first given the branding, and I'd say the same goes for titles like Critical Velocity being ostensibly a Ridge Racer spin-off. There is 04 Champ for the PC Engine, has big huge story with adventure gamey segments and even random battles. But aside from that and Code R, which mixes racing with dating semi-structured story bits, really and truly the only bona fide example that there is Racing Lagoon.
Damn, son.
Get a load of this!
Random encounters, grinding, aggressively story-focused, and rich with text. Towns, big hair, this is the car JRPG. And as is quite befit of a racing game, it oozes with style out of its every orifice, just not limiting it to nice cars and menus. It is every frame, every font, every loading screen, stat screen, text box, and meticulously composition shot. Character placement, text placement, camera placement. Every single second of this fucker is an iconic promotional render for itself. FF7 has Bike Cloud, Parasite Eve 2 had Sad Aya, but Racing Lagoon has the entire fucking game firing on all cylinders in this fashion. Fashion dripping out of the character's clothing that looks dang near current. Riding on sleeves and pant leg, baggy fits and e-boy hairstyles. Time and trends do be cyclical, and I think a lot of modern fashion is for sure based on shit that's been done doing in Japan and Korea for decades, but man, that doesn't not make this shit leagues ahead of its time neither. And story-wise, it tells a tale of a legendary racer racing beyond speed. And this gang of knuckleheads consisting out of Sho,
The Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
and his goon-ass frenemies and homies being potential witnesses to this, thus sending the whole street racing scene into disarray. Gangs going mad, falling apart, people rearing up and ready to go, and our lost and taught baby boy caught in the midst of everything. Until even eventually the corporate underworld gets involved in this high-stakes little street game. It is wilding, it is styling, it is existential, and it is sometimes a little bit goofy looking. Square, despite what they're known for, has racing games in their blood. Rad Racer was their first NES game, and their first PS2 game was Driving Emotion Type S. The PS1 also had Chocobo Racing, and plenty of their RPGs have driving segments in them. So, while their history with action is more than a little bit jank, I really don't think they're at all the worst pick for taking a shot at a proper JRPG-ass CarPG. Cause yeah, the driving is satisfying, beefy, drift-heavy, and weighty. The cars feel fat and heavy, as if beasts of brick and metal blockages needing to be tamed. So like actual cars. X to accelerate, square to foot to brake, and circle to hand to brake. Letting go of X in turns lets you smooth arc through them, using square to slow down lets you take them more normally, and finger blasting circle pivots you pretty much around your own whole axis. It's a really simple racer, contextually, but it requires a bit of mastering to nail that timing, which is doubled by your car's handling changing across the hours. Thing is that the tuning that you do to them is more than simple RPG stats. It is feeling. Anything from the types of tires to where in your car the engine is put to how heavy the engine is or the body or the shape of your vehicle and its aerodynamics, it all plays into the gameplay kinesthetics and is wholly customizable on Armored Core tier. Overall, on a base level, I'd say that the driving is a nice middle ground between Simi, Gran Turismo, and fuck it, just hit all the railings, Ridge Racer. Also, props to the enemy AI. It's never cheap, rubber banding and shit. They make mistakes too and aren't robotically perfect. It's legit really good. Being a JRPG though, having a solid base battle system is good, but if the implementation sucks fuck, then things can still grind gears. So, structurally, it has a city map with points of interest. Side missions, main objectives, shops and goons challenging you at random for quick and easy raises to get rewards. AKA taking their parts, EXP and money. Rather than it having NPCs like a normal, each stoppable place is its own stylish little vignette, which adds hella to the exploration and makes the cast and setting pretty instantly memorable, I'd say. Sadly, there's no waypoints or anything. Your friends will often tell you where to go or what to look for, but you might not know where that is. So it's a good thing then that being lost is pretty much built into the game. It has 15, I think they're not all numbered, chapters, all lasting about an hour at least, and much more if you're willing to do the extra stuff. My playthrough evened out at about 25 hours as there's just that much to see and do. You see, every one of these chapters has events up the ass, and with every main event, those vignette locations will essentially sort of repop. Update to suit the current story. Maps is also dawdled with mini games and challenges, and items will refresh across the many shops, and who knows what the hell else you may wish to upgrade, find, take care of, or grind for in any given chapter. I genuinely enjoyed simply driving around and catching up with the cast. Seeing what the waitresses are gossiping about now, reminiscing with my homie at playground, check up on my car mechanic buddy, scope out the villain of the week, and stumble into a plethora of wacky situations and diversions. One moment I was prowling on down Gal Alley, and the next I was doing races in Chinatown. Add to this the fact that every few chapters new parts of the city will unlock with new courses and tracks to race in, new characters and locations to hang out at, and parts to buy, steal, and upgrade, and I ended up with a game in which I did not mind the grinding at all. Like, your car constantly changes, not just in feel but also in how cool it looks, which is very rewarding, but Also, cause of the field changing, every random crop of random encounters may as well be a whole new ass racing game. Even if the tracks don't change, which they totally do given the many areas and land types, be it winding highway mountains, snowy rural towns, busy city streets, professional racetracks, or angular abandoned docks. Making doing the same turns over and over still fun for me given that how I drifted was differently challenging every single time. Whether due to the car being more slippery or easier to steer, or more slower to start, which makes guardrailing a bitch, or just speeding uncontrollably all over the turns. Besides, even when you have a OP as fuck motherfucker car, you can still very much get your shit eaten due to your own driving skills. Bigger number does not de facto equate to being a better driver. You do need to learn them drifts. I likened it to Armored Core, but it does legit have that lovely FromSofty marriage between player dexterity and skill at driving and RPG-style numberfuckery. This be the type of game that you could play as a great racing game player, relying mostly on that, just as Dark Souls can be very friendly to folks adapted action games. But just like Souls, if you suck at dodging, then, well, you can just as well bank on the numbers to get big HP or big poise. Or big speed in this case. And min-maxing that, in my opinion, fucking owned. Seeing the many changes my car went through was, again, really rewarding. It's more than just numbers, it'll literally go on to feel better to drive. The getting rewards is the get rewards you get rewards. Not to mention that all builds are valid too. You got motherfuckers out here finishing the game using a goddamn bus. In my Discord, we had a channel of folks playing through it alongside each other and myself, and we all ended up with drastically different cars. Anything goes, as long as it works for you. So, yeah, it's a great racing game and a great JRPG no matter which way you cut it. And the spot in that there middle is pretty hecking sweet even when big challenge. In this, though, I do think I should pass out some tips. I may have had a breezy fun time, but if we're gonna go with the FromSoft analogy again, then, well, not everyone will have when left to their own devices. Tip number 1. It is perfectly okay to feel lost. You can always go back to the starting area, aka the hangout, to get hints on where to go. Tip number 2. For winning races, you get RP. This is racer money, Knight coin, if you will, which can be exchanged for yen at the bank so you can use it at store. Tip number 3. The tutorials talk big talk, but generally if number go up, you're good, long as you mind the wait. Of course, there's shit like torque versus max speed, but I didn't really get into any trouble with that until very late into the game, and all it took for me to fix it was to simply switch some shit around. These low comp thingies did the trick. Tip number 4. Using save states is fine. Encouraged even. It's an old ass game, it's a slow ass game, has tons of those classic PS1 loading times, so even if a L don't set you back much, technically states can still bypass the waiting. Admittedly, it does have some of the coolest loading screens that you will ever goddamn see. Back to back to back. These is all dope as heck, and unique to pretty much every track. But you defo don't have to see each of them several times for several minutes, I don't think. Not to mention Square games of this era having a bit of a habit of dropping the player into shit without explaining much of anything. Like, I'm sure it's in there somewhere in some of these, but I can't fucking think of any of the PS1 FFs ever explaining how status effects work, for example, which is mirrored here in how fiddly it can be to try out and compare builds. Here, you can see me using the snipping tool and my old trusty save states to compare numbers and try setups without suffering giant errors and financial setbacks, which is a method I recommend. Tip number 5. This one I can't stress enough. Make sure you get the drifting down. I've spoken to a fair few folks who were having the hardest fucking time because they hadn't. So drifting is your best friend. Circle button is your best friend. Press it while turning. The final tip. Do races. Look around. Ask around. Hit up locations just to see if anything's going on. I wouldn't say that the game is grind heavy exactly, because the implications of that, to me at least, are repetitive, and as I was hopefully able to convey earlier, that ain't what this game is at all, but do maximize upon your race challenge opportunities. If there's an objective you know to go to, it's still worth perusing a bit beforehand to make sure you don't cuck yourself stat-wise. Same way that you shouldn't run from every battle and ignore treasure chests in the Final Fantasies, basically. The game's vibe certainly encourages acknowledges it, by the way. There's a lot of instances where Sho will be like, yeah, I'm just cruise right now. But even then, I figured it was worth stating clearly here, especially with how much additional story you can miss out if you rush on through.
Chicken
Race.
final round.
Freddy is hot. Freddy is cool. Freddy is a good guy. Freddy is the highway Top Gun.
Man, am I glad that this game got a fan translation. An official one probably would have been too cowardly to use the cool all caps English, and they likely would have used some whack-ass upscaling or cropping to force 16:9, and for this game I don't think that would work too well. And besides, I've seen what Square does to fonts in remasters. So, big ups to the legend, the god, the goat, Hilltop, for making this whole thing come together, as this game's usage of text is incredibly, deeply, and ingrainedly important to its themes, vibes, settings, and characters. In Japan, Racing Lagoon is known to be a bit of a meme, oft-dubbed the poetry game, or something along those lines at least. Thing is that it's been written and directed by the ever-flowery Motomu Toriyama. Writer on FF10, director on FF10-2, and writer and director for the FF13 series and the Third Birth. In my eyes, man's a god of non-conventional writing, throwing plot structures and regular stakes and see-comeable twists and whatever the fuck else basic fuck shit right into the fucking trash. Breaking down his characters, making themes go meta, and loving it when folks get lost into existential philosophical diatribes, and Racing Lagoon isn't any different, albeit a bit more grounded. Well, almost. From Lagoon to Le Si, Motomu Toriyama Tale. Like the boy banter at least is basically just as it is. I'm gonna give the translators a giant dub here, as I've said, they left in the cool English, which in this context, if not as intended in Japanese as well, becomes slang. You see, another thing an official localization may have been too cowardly for is swearing. Sure, it's true that Japanese doesn't have swearing per se in the way that Euro languages do, but if you localize, you don't directly translate. And these is street kids doing street races. And street people, they have a bit of funk in their speech. Accents, creoles, working class mannerisms, speech patterns, and swearing. These guys ain't fucking newsreaders or teachers. They have street of the soul. And so, in between the shits and bros and hellas, terms like get rewards and revenge race become local street terms that they use just as they would have had in IRL. The poetry is here too, though, and I will get to it, but for now I just want to highlight the contrast with it and this cool, chillin', vibin' and drivin' vibes. Like I mentioned, a lot of what you do is exploring, hanging out, catching up. Even the tutorials is mad casual, referencing Final Fantasy VIII and Saga at you and shit, it's cute. It has this laid-back, cool guy, casual guy, tough guy facade going for it. Inside, they are deep emotion, but outside, they're finger-banging and smirking at the camera. And the music helps a lot with this, I'd say. Composed by the dynamic duo of Noriko Matsueda and Takahito Eguchi, the former having worked on Tobal and various front missions, the latter having done pretty much all major Sonic since 06, and together with their iconic style that you hear here, they did Final Fantasy X and The Bouncer. Acid jazz, fusion, hip-hop, and funk effortlessly combining with whatever the style of the particular game needs to be it 2000s J-pop for 10-2, butt rock for Bouncer, or drum and bass for Lagoon. It creates such a smooth, sexy, relaxed energy that turns every drive and conversation into the embodiment of casual, and every race and tense situation into the hypest, craziest shit. Anyway, yeah, all of this is filtered through our main man, Sho. He's a rookie, doesn't know shit, fish out of water, but god dang it, does he try to seem as badass as he possibly could. Talking big talks, being very standoffish and cocky when chatting to other racers, and yet when trapped alone with his thoughts, you get to know that he's actually just some idiot 18-year-old being all like, ugh, this cool guy, he has a girlfriend. But me, I'm married to the road. And it's like, yeah, sure, buddy. I guess that's why you're always so awkward when talking to the girls. He reflects hella on hella, though, and has hella doubts about everything he comes and goes about. Dude's sort of a middle ground between Squall, Cloud, and Tidus. Not as emo as the formerest, or as fucked up or cold as the middest, and certainly not as stupid as the latterest, but definitely still a little bit of a bitch, a little bit of a wannabe action hank, and a little bit of a dumbass. This place is totally empty. It's kind of nice to relax here. I don't really do crowds. I tend to get pushed around in them. Why is everyone always in such a damn rush for anyway?
That sign says watch out for perverts. You see that?
It works very well. Lets the game elegantly explain itself and its setting flow poetically, seeing as he waffles on about literally fucking everything from the state of the city's post-80s glory disrepair to what it means to go beyond speed. And of course, with the whole street racing scene being in an uproar over exactly that, there'll be many stakes and rivalries stuffed to the brim with teenage angst and rage. The story goes places, not gonna lie. The cast members all have their time to shine and develop, and it's a pretty tight crew too. You really get to know them, especially when time is taken to chill.
These feelings.
Though, sometimes the writing is flowery and poetic in a way where it's almost funny. Certainly when paired with the over-the-top presentation and music, though when it wants to hit, it will hit. I mean, street races do be dangerous. Crashes happen, cops get involved, some folks who partake may be fucking with other crimes too, organized or otherwise. I think by the time a character got into an accident during a very interactive race, followed up by this epic sequence where suddenly it's like, oh fuck the parents, oh shit, this is real, and show going. Makoto was barely hanging on. All sorts of machines and tubes were keeping him hanging by a thread. His family kicked us all out of the room. They saw us as insects leeching off of his life force. I guess that wasn't too far off. We couldn't call ourselves human anymore. But we couldn't be insects either. Would an insect cry if it had seen what we seen? Like, goddamn, that straddles the line so far past the usual melodrama right back into being impactful again, as it sort of broke the assumed reality that the game is stooped in. What I mean with that would be that, say, you had an anime or some shit, a real cute one about people battling with, I don't know, cans. And everyone in this world, they love cans. You got can gear, and can police, and can hospitals. But then, suddenly, after a bunch of episodes of established can tone, someone suddenly dies horribly in a freak canning accident. Not the can, but the canner. Then the law gets involved and real-ass hospitals instead of the can center, and then the characters start going, oh, what the fuck, what are we even doing? I just loved cans, and I had no idea it would come to this. This, in essence, would make real-world rules apply to this dumb can world settings of precariously suspended canned disbelief. And so, most shows like that would thus avoid making things too real that way as to not deal with the worms stored inside. But Racing Lagoon dives head fucking first into existentialism. This ain't a world where street racers matter in a reasonable amount. It is a world to where the few dudes that you happen to see the world through street racing matters an unreasonable amount. At least it becomes that. And that shit's fucking potent. Lagoon's characters are fully aware of how isolated and insulated their world is, waxing poetic about knowing that they're doing this for technically nothing but the thrill. It gives the game a subversive and meta tone I really didn't expect it to have, though given how Final Fantasy can be, especially when Toriyama's writing, I guess I shouldn't have been surprised. But with those games, the main characters are the center of the world. They are doing something important. Sora can be longing, Vivi can ponder the reason of his existence, Lightning can question her purpose in life, but at the end of the day, these motherfuckers are undoubtedly pivotal to the worlds that they inhabit. But these guys are just fucking street punks. Active at times, most normal people are asleep, racing over stakes set wholly by themselves and their own egos. So the existentialism is poignant. Perhaps a reflection of the writers used to applying their bravado to bravada's plot suddenly finding themselves writing about something relatively down to earth, but as a result of this, what could have been a fluffy story about simply needing to be the best there ever was, or some type of unrealistic scenario, it is now a story of mental health, ego, relationships, and the maintaining and crumbling under their respective weights. As I became faster and faster, taking down better racers after better racers, all the while being stuck in the small confines of a car's inner cabin with shows increasingly more manic thoughts and musings as cutscenes or scripted events shape and shift some of your accomplishments, with big highs going high, highs being crushed and lows being low, crashed into a rut, I too began to feel the speed consuming me. It is a story that's meta in every sense of the word, and deeply and bigly ahead of its time in its subject matter. Of course, it takes it in a very Motori Toriyama direction. If you know the plot to FF13-2 or Lightning Returns, or are familiar with the twist in the Third Birthday or Final Fantasy VII R's ending, then you'll know what I mean, but I like that.
Mind-splintering plot twists, unconventional logics, daring directions for established characters.
The man does it all, and I respected many. Plus, I think what can be confused as random poetic waffling is, I think, an attempt at a noir style of framing. Like, peep this scene, for example. She's drowning her pain with speed. You'll end up going numb doing that. I stared out the window as I mulled over my thoughts and saw my face reflected against the backdrop of the city lights. Johnny's was absolutely packed tonight. As a pitch-black coffee was placed before me, I noticed something. The hustle and bustle of the dinner spilled through a crack in my mind, even as I tried to block it all out. See how much that adds? How much more it is than if it would have faded to him in the diner? It has a mood now, a tone, a true vibe, and a purpose, regardless of if Sho himself can ever find one or not. Racing Lagoon is not like the other PS1 games. You can have two characters against a static pre-rendered background talking, or two characters talking in a simple 3D space, but Lagoon is the peak of pre-renders. And so it has pans, angles, tasteful fades, and clever use of transparency layers, lighting on Mizzou, and suddenly those two characters talking becomes this cinematic marvel of picture book render layers. I'd legit be down to analyze a bunch of these, but I would really just be describing what I'm seeing, and you've been seeing this shit for the whole video now, so I'm sure you can see for yourself. That said, there's times where what this game does with nothing but text, images, and sounds sent some fucking shivers down my spine with how well it was able to set down its vibe. Damn, look at that bitch go! On the other hand, because there's so much CG, the quality of it isn't quite on par with what the Final Fantasies were getting. Animations can be more than a little jank looking, but honestly, something about this being about smug, shit-eating grin type asshole motherfuckers sorta makes that fit. They're jerky because they're jerks. And other than that, it's a thematically dense beast, stylistically unparalleled, and a good-ass racing game, and a good-ass JRPG that, despite being very undoubtedly a game from the 90s in a few obtuse ways, also has plenty of deep customization and progression to its systems, and story-driven unlocks that you wouldn't see in racing games until, more or less the past 10 years or so, and all of these shit started having open worlds and life service elements, and even then none of these fuckers have stories as dense as Racing Lagoons. I want to thank all of these amazing people for making this fan translation come to life. This game was legit everything I wanted it to be and more, and I would not have been able to have it if it wasn't for y'all. So, from the bottom of my feelings, thank you. Also, shoutouts to my Patreons for enabling me. I don't know how much of a hand I had in this existing, but me yelling about it on youtube.com for several years, i.e. manifesting, probably didn't hurt either. And I wouldn't be able to continue doing that without y'all's financial aid. Well, that's technically a lie, but it'd be less fun to do, with real life breathing down my dick hole like that, so thanks. Oh, and also,
Stop fucking tweeting to me about it!
I've literally known since day one. I've supported it loads, in videos before even, multiple times. Trust me, I know that this exists, you goddamn motherfucker!